Why are we here? Why have we chosen this particular moment in our consciousness experience in the here and now, when there's an infinity of other possibilities for us to experience right now in this moment? You are here right now experiencing this talk because you're curious, you know a little bit about past lives, or you're simply interested in the concept. Maybe you've had some experiences accessing your past lives, either through some interesting coincidences, or maybe through hypnosis. In this talk, we will not be hypnotizing anyone, but we will talk about how we can allow ourselves to access a bit of a particular lifetime we are experiencing within our subconscious awareness that may be heavily influencing our current feelings, memories, and motivations right in the here and now. My name is Bill G, and I have been an Akashic Dowser and energy healer for over 20 years. Recently, my wife Nina and I have been exploring the nature of time and time travel in an effort to develop new dowsing tools to help both ourselves and our clients. Through the dowsing tools that we've developed, we are able to access and triangulate a place in space-time where a particular motivation is coming through so that we can better understand it, and most importantly, enable us to receive the gifts that we are trying to give ourselves. This gift can be used as a compass for navigating the now and enable us to make decisions not only about what is in our highest good, but what brings us the most joy, and to show us the easiest way through complex situations. Accessing past lives is one way to bring into our consciousness our now experience with more clarity and decisiveness. Within my Akashic dowsing practice, there are many ways we can research and receive instruction from our higher consciousness. Last year, I spoke about the time temple charts, but that is simply one of hundreds of chart systems, each with their own merits and limitations, that provides us with the inner instructions we need to clear away any old, stuck patterns in order to make way for a more fulfilling life experience. Credit is also due to Dominer and their extensive research into the nature of time and consciousness. Some of the parts of this talk were adapted from their own past life workshops, which are well worth the time to research for yourselves. In the first part of this talk, we will discuss the scientific basis of past life research and how we can use it to positively affect what is happening in our lives in the here and now. We will then briefly talk about the dowsing charts that I use in my practice and how they can help my clients expand their awareness beyond what they experience in their daily lives. So we begin with a simple question. What is time and what is a timeline? If time is a line, did it have a beginning that started in some distant past? And if it had a beginning or starting point, does that mean that someday it will have some sort of end point or termination? Is our experience within our present reality consistent with the idea of linear time? When we connect to a traumatic event in our own lifetime, does it live somewhere in the distant past, or is it right here, right now, in our present? When we connect to a character from our past lives, do we perceive that person that we're connecting to as dead, and therefore as they have nothing to offer us in our present life? When we connect to a character from a future life, do we perceive that person's life as yet to be written, and therefore they too have nothing to offer us in our present life? For those of us who have done extensive work with past lives and future lives, we discover quite quickly that these people we connect with aren't just characters in a storybook. They are living, breathing people who are facing their own conflicts and struggles, then that their lives can be just as affected by the choices we make in our own lives, just as our lives can be affected by the choices they make. You might say that the idea of past life characters being alive and able to make real-time choices is all well and good for science fiction and fantasy, but we all know that time is time, and it doesn't change once it happens. I am pleased to say that current research in quantum physics is telling us that there's a lot more to know about time, and its connection to consciousness is becoming more evident with each scientific breakthrough. We begin our scientific conversation with a little bit of quantum electrodynamics. I will not be going into the complex math here, as we would need several days to even begin to touch the surface, and I am by no means an expert in this field. But I will offer a few concepts to make the perception of timelines easier to understand. Within quantum electrodynamics, there's this idea of the graviton. The graviton is a proposed particle in 3D reality, much like a photon, that's found at the end of a spiral before it moves to create an opposite spiral, which creates the chronological and temporal clocks, respectively, which I will explain in a moment. The graviton seemingly works to create reality by carrying and mediating gravity from one dimension and or plane to another. Think of two grassy lawns separated by a tall wooden fence. In your yard, you have an adventure-loving dog who has managed to find a vulnerable part of the lawn by the fence to dig under to get into your neighbor's lawn. You believe you've never been to the neighbor's lawn, and you have no idea what it looks like at all. You may even think that there's nothing on the other side of the fence because you can't see it. While Fluffy is on your side of the fence, you perceive him playing and most likely digging. But when Fluffy gets to the other side of the fence, you don't perceive Fluffy at all. Fluffy holds no mass on this side of the lawn, and if Fluffy didn't come home for a very long time, you might even start to think that Fluffy doesn't exist either. Or does he? As some of you may be aware, there are places on Earth where we would consider normal space-time does not function, much like the vulnerable part of the fence. These include the Bermuda Triangle, Mount Shasta, Stonehenge, the Mystery Spot just outside of Santa Cruz, California. This is a circular area of about 150 feet around where your perceptions of gravity, height, etc. are questionable. In these places, we could say that maybe due to particular metals, geopathic stress, ley lines, or a mischievous dog, creates another field that overrides the Earth's field to suspend the natural workings of the graviton, and thus what we would call the gravitational field. In these places, Fluffy may be playing and digging in one moment and not there the next. Or Fluffy may be an incredibly large for a dog, and certainly not the size you remember Fluffy to be. One of the many objectives of the Large Hadron Collider at CERN is to find out whether or not gravitons exist. Detecting gravitons is not so easy because during the high-energy collisions, they rapidly disappear into different dimensions, not unlike our missing Fluffy. All we can see is evidence of something acting on something else and leaving behind a byproduct. But how is this possible? In quantum electrodynamics, a graviton is a closed string as opposed to an open string of a photon. As a result, it is not bound by something they call a brane. A brane is an extended object with any given number of dimensions. So our graviton, much like our much-loved Fluffy, can pop in and out of our perceived reality, whereas light or photons cannot. The movement of an infinitesimal number of gravitons in and out of this dimension creates the ability for light to condense down into solid, liquid, and gaseous forms by creating a gravitational field, and thus creating what we believe to be real within the visible light spectrum. Already our timeline is dubious because the very thing that supposedly makes our reality and our experience of moving through it zips in and out of this plane of existence, like the flicker of light on a screen that we call a moving picture. A movie is simply a series of still pictures that flash in and out of our perception. The people and the stories portrayed on the moving picture are not real, but they portray a form of reality as we remember it. This perceived moment is represented by the chronological and temporal clocks. Simply put, the chronological clock is how we generally believe we perceive the passage of time. We perceive the passing of the seasons, day moving into night, and life's slow march towards death or entropy. This is the chronological clock that produces the timeline, or when the graviton moves into this plane of existence. But what about the new? After winter, we experience spring. From an act of love, we see the birth of a child. From a thought or an idea, we see great projects coming to fruition. This is the product of the temporal clock, or syntropy, where things come into being. When the graviton moves out of this plane, time kind of retreats in on itself, and you get creation, or the suspension of entropy. Why does this have anything to do with past lives? Well, if we simply moved from birth to death, and that was everything that was, this would imply that the gravitons would be only moving into this dimension we call home and not out again. Our lives would be reduced to a single season, the lifetime of the fruit fly. We would never experience spring, babies, or we would never have the birth of inspiration, new ideas, scientific discoveries. So there has to be, within all of this death, birth happening everywhere, all the time, including ourselves being birthed into a million fragments in a million different places. Why would my 2-year-old complain to his mom that he misses his wife and children in a place called Tennessee and ask every day where they were? Why would he know the town and the street that he lived on and have that place actually exist? Why would so many people, including Dr. Bruce Goldberg, author of Past Lives, Future Lives, have a mountain of case studies and evidence of people with prior lifetimes? In the lower chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, there is an interesting effect of timelessness and funky gravitational effects like in Santa Cruz, but on a more intense level. The general public isn't allowed into the lower chamber due to several instances where visitors have died because they somehow managed to manifest their greatest fears. It is said that the chamber creates a field which creates the junction of gravity and anti-gravity, time and anti-time, chronological and temporal clocks, and it's a place where the fourth dimensional part of our existence can be readily experienced. Here, people are no longer allowed to go because when they would enter and not be properly prepared, their worst fears would manifest, even if they'd never had those fears before entering the chamber. Some even perished via snakes that don't exist in Egypt or anywhere near there, or fire where there is no fire source available, or drowning when there is no water. Where did these experiences arise? We and many others believe that these experiences are right next door in the hypothetical neighbor's yard you've never seen, but Fluffy knows it like the back of his paw. Within past life work, it is sometimes difficult to let go of the belief that our past lives are in the past, and the life we are currently living is in the present, and our future lives exist somewhere in some nebulous future that is yet to be lived. However, when you begin to look at the math about graviton, string theory, quantum and electrodynamics, and all things related to consciousness, several mathematical theorems which produce close estimates show that all time happens within a 4 to 6 second interval, and that's it. Your entire reality is 4 to 6 seconds long, and it happens all the time. It is the fracturing of consciousness, an effect that many fields surrounding us on the planet Earth that gives us the perception of a timeline moving forward with a beginning, middle, and end. If you happen to be allowed to enter the lower chamber of the Great Pyramid of Egypt, you will enter a field where all of this collapses and your consciousness can be somewhere else that is intimately meshed with you in some fashion, but outside your current experience of reality. There are other places in the world where you can experience this phenomenon. Other places include the Temple of Humanity at Dahomey in northern Italy, Machu Picchu in Peru, and numerous other places known and unknown throughout the world. In places like these, your body can literally disappear and go with your consciousness, because these places can elevate your frequency so high that you no longer appear visible on this plane. After entering one of these places, you end up somewhere else that also happens to be right here, just on a different frequency. Describing this phenomenon in great detail would take too much time today, so I will briefly describe a timeline and how it pertains to past life work and time travel, and how we can utilize frequency work, dowsing, and our own consciousness to grab pieces of this experience for our own use while staying right here in our own bodies in our current timeline. It is important to note that your consciousness exists much like the graviton. It can pop in and out of this dimension. Each night when you go to sleep and you start to dream, your consciousness leaves your body and starts to explore other dimensions. Your consciousness can be anywhere and everywhere, where it meshes energetically and vibrationally at once within that 4 to 6 second interval. Because of our body and brain structure, we generally remember only being in one current body. There are exceptions, of course, but most of us have a difficult time imagining our minds and bodies being anywhere else than where they are right now. Imagine you are sleeping and having a vivid dream of living and doing crazy things in Cairo. Your body and the consciousness fragment that you normally remember as living here in New England doesn't have any concept of living in New England right here in this moment. Right now, it lives as it has always lived in Cairo. You can fly. You are married to someone you've never met before in your other life, and you are super successful in your career. Your consciousness fragment in Cairo is very dissimilar to the life you live in New England. But at that moment, Both are true. Now imagine that there are hundreds of consciousness fragments living hundreds of different lives in 100 different places all at once. You get to see many of them in your dreams, and you get to experience the most profound aspects of your current life right here when you are not asleep. But it doesn't stop at dreaming. Let's say that you have a desperate need to create pottery, but you don't know why. So one day you decide to try it, and you're just horrible at it. You even find that you're actually hating making pottery. What were you thinking? Why did you have this great need to take on a hobby that you hated? It's because there was something connected to making pottery that was very relevant to the time of who and where you were when you decided to make some of your own, and you decided to act on that feeling. At some other consciousness fragment, you are making pottery, and something surrounding it, in this example, maybe traumatic, is giving you clues to a problem you are experiencing right now. So how do we normally perceive time then? A timeline is something that begins scanning forward and then projects forward. Let's say you go to a person who has the ability to see the future or has a set of tools to help them read the future. This can be an Akashic dowser, tarot card reader, psychic, shaman, or whatever. Their scanning can be seen as what they predict for you during that session. The energy of the scan is what is available to you at this moment, and in this moment only. That energy will change if you choose to change it. If you make the choice to change it, and you do the work to expand your consciousness, whatever that person predicted for you will change. However, if you're not willing to do the work, or if you think that all tarot readers are just intuitive entertainers, then the reader's reading for you will be accurate every time because you have not altered your present frequency. The projection is how it plays out. The dream becoming the reality. The playing out happens due to either noticing and assimilating a novel experience or what we like to call a novel energy coordinate being introduced into your field and not noticing and assimilating a novel energy coordinate within the energy coordinates available to you. For example, let us say that it's your dream to become a best-selling author. That dream can fizzle after your fourth rejection because you had blocks or beliefs that kept you from seeing it through. On the other hand, you can choose to persevere, to pivot as the tide pushes and draws you here and there, and that will get you to your dream destination. The rejection is the novel energy coordinate, and you can choose to ignore it and keep being the writer, or react and give up. Whatever you do, it doesn't matter. But if you begin to rewrite your life based on what you want and keeping the course, you can begin to shape your life instead of being drug around like Fluffy's favorite dirty, ripped up chew toy. If your body is 100% on board with a particular novel thought, it is very likely that it will manifest. If not, or you think there may also be feelings of guilt or fear or trauma over prior setbacks, then it is likely that your dream will not manifest, or if it does, it will not bring you as much joy or freedom into your life as you thought that it would. Further, since the energy isn't all on the dream, it is likely that it will fall apart again somewhere down the road. This is why clearing out blocks is so important to prosperity, and learning from those setbacks while persevering and making clear all-in choices is so important. A timeline is also a closed loop due to the graviton, and it ripples out, affecting everything around you as it goes. It also changes the landscape of your perception of reality, but only if novel instances are noticed and assimilated into it. Think of it this way: can anything change if nothing changes? For example, the Higgs boson particle is the fundamental particle of the Higgs field, which gives mass to other fundamental particles that make up your solid reality, the things you see in your life. The Higgs boson, working with your own consciousness and the graviton, locks in a new novel coordinate within your range, a new happening of existence, which has its own intelligence and meshes with yours. The two mesh and reality reorganizes, and we get a different future than the one that the tarot card reader read for us only 3 months ago. The new reality that grew out of where we were. That doesn't mean that your tarot card reader was wrong per se. It's just that you did the work to change that reality, and a new novel outcome has manifested into your life existence. Many things like our name, our astrological information, and many other things organize us into this 3D space. And we come with and tend to generate problems along the way, which tend to not allow us to readily see the novel coordinates around us that can change our lives for the better if we take them. When we do the work to expand our consciousness, of banishing fear and control in our lives, we get to see things and we can assimilate them easier and easier. By doing this, it has a broader effect on everyone around you, making everyone's life better and easier and less full of junk. Anything that occurs resets time within that 4 to 6 second interval of actual reality. Whenever that occurs, whether it's the same old, like working, watching TV, then going to bed, or something completely new, like someone close to you died, or you happen to see an interesting opportunity mentioned by a friend, then within the next 4 to 6 seconds, you will loop the thing that you paid attention to, and whatever failed to get your attention either finds its way into the subconscious or leaves our field completely as a missed opportunity. Our job is to make sure that we are always looking for the novel thing within our field, no matter how small or seemingly insignificant, so that we can stop looping things that aren't working for us and embrace those things that will bring about more joy, more fulfillment, and more love into our lives. If something gets undone, per se, through Akashic dowsing, or something new is perceived and assimilated, then everything changes in your past and your future as well. If you had something horrific happen to you and you learned and you grew from it, that experience of that trauma will rewrite the trauma for all time in every consciousness experience you have. Because you leveled up consciously due to the event, you will hold a coordinate for the new experience, which goes into the data bank of the Earth, the Akashic records. This is a grid or a log for all of the different coordinates that can be materialized and experienced in your reality. The Earth's grid holds the memory of what happens in its field and allows it to make form come into reality as it intersects with actions and decisions anywhere along the line. This is why you can not only access your past life or your future life, but you can also access the frequency of things that occurred before there to bring into your current consciousness. By looking for it, we can find the line or the coordinate where matter can materialize. By finding clues to a past life that readily meshes with who we are and what we're currently going through, we can utilize the leveled up gifts, that version of life you created, in a conscious way. By putting everything into your consciousness, you can either clear it out, as in the case of trauma or negative things, or you can use it to strengthen your choice so that 100% of you can get on board with the decision and propel you out of a seemingly complex and impossible problem or situation and toward a truly joyful life. Fluffy came home, and you happen to notice that he can now talk, and he tells you of his adventures, and that he's decided to travel and become an entrepreneur. How would that novel experience change your perception of reality? Now I want to talk about the dowsing charts we developed to help us connect to our different expressions of our consciousness in other lifetimes. When I'm in session with a client and these charts come up, we connect to ourselves in another lifetime via the charts. We first establish an intention of what we want to address. We then ask High Self to connect us with the expression of ourselves in another lifetime who has been able to find a novel solution to the problem that we're currently facing. The charts don't get into a lot of detail about the particular lifetime that we're connecting with, and that's intentional. We don't want to get bogged down with the day-to-day life of this other fragment of our reality, but instead find the diamond that we want to use in this one. Let's say that a client is struggling with a difficult situation in their life right now, where the path to an outcome that is favorable to them is not easily seen. In all of the other expressions of your consciousness, including this one, all possible solutions to this situation have been done. All we have to do is connect to the expression where that solution exists and ask for the information that we need, the diamond, or maybe Fluffy's long-lost squeaky toy. For example, let's say our client's current career isn't giving them as much joy as it once did. Perhaps the industry has changed since they started their career, or perhaps they're just starting to get bored and they're looking for a change. They want to do something that is going to give them more joy and satisfaction in their life, but they have no idea where to start. In the session, we are directed to the past life connections chart because we need to make a connection to another expression of themselves in another lifetime who has had a similar experience to what they're going through right now, and they have been able to find a solution. The first thing we do is make a connection. Here we don't get into a lot of detail, but we make enough of a connection where the two consciousness expressions can exchange information pertaining to the problem that we are attempting to solve. By connecting, the client can receive images and information previously inaccessible that would allow them to know their current situation. We then ask for a gift from that connection, which brings us to the second chart of the Past Life Connections Protocol, which is the Incarnational Motivations chart. In this chart, we douse the primary life motivation for the person we're connecting with so that it is connected to the intention of the seeker's reading. This can be a motivation from bringing in our incarnational paradigms or constructs, or we could be focusing on a character motivation or drives that are at the root of every decision that they make. For example, let's say that the motivation that comes up for our client is idealism. Now we understand that the aspect we're connecting with bases their decisions upon a moral compass of what they believe should be, and perhaps either ignore or overlook what is actually happening in front of them. Then we move on to the third chart in order to receive the piece of wisdom that we need to help us with whatever they're going through. The gift consists of various animals. Since it's unlikely that the aspect of ourselves we're connecting with has the same cultural context that we do, or even speaks the same language that we do, we use animal totems. According to Graham Hancock in his newest book, America Before, there is mounting evidence of an advanced civilization that existed prior to the close of the last ice age, which was highly advanced in the science of the spirit, which was seeded into the collective unconsciousness of all humanity. Therefore, the language of the animal totems is a universal language that all of us can understand no matter what culture you come from. The gift for our client is the rabbit. The rabbit speaks to calling in one's fears to teach valuable lessons. So, what our client is telling themselves from this other lifetime is to examine what it is that they are fearful of within this decision to change their career. What is it that is driving their fear in this decision to change careers? Are they afraid of trapping themselves into a dead-end job? Are they afraid that if they stand still for too long, that others may consume them? Rabbits are animals who are constantly on the move and hyper-aware of their surroundings. They are also prolific breeders, always ensuring that their legacy will go on, even if they cannot. Therefore, the solution to our client's problem that their other self is communicating to them could be to change the focus of their career from one of mere survival to one where they can teach others how to do their job so that no matter what happens to them, their unique skills and abilities will live on. It could also mean that where they are right now has too many predators, and it's time for them to move on to safer pastures where they're less likely to be trapped. Again, the specific details are not important because the client understands their situation better than anyone else. However, the message they're receiving from their other self is that their choice point has more to do with their fear rather than any desire to grow or do something else because they're bored. It forces them to look deeper into their subconscious as to why they're feeling the way they feel in the first place. And by understanding our subconscious motivations, we find it a lot easier to find the right solution. We then thank ourselves in this other lifetime by offering a solution to their problem that they're facing. The reason why we do this is because there needs to be an equal exchange of energy between what we receive and what we give. Our other self is just as alive and dealing with their own struggles the same as you are. And we douse a gift to them to help them through whatever it is that they're dealing with. My clients are always surprised to see that the animal totem that we douse for the gift in exchange happens to be a totem that is very strong in their current lifetime. But it makes sense because we receive that which we need and we give that which is strongest within us. It is a wonderful responsibility to care for ourselves in this way, knowing that the choices we make here can make someone else's and ourselves' lives so much better, just for seeing and acknowledging our greatest gifts to humanity. If all of this sounds interesting to you and you'd like to learn how these charts work for yourself in your own dowsing practice, I'll be teaching a workshop on October 1st and 2nd. And for listening and watching today's talk, you will receive a $25 discount towards the class fee. You can register for the class by going to vitalbioenergetics.com and register for the workshop, and at checkout, use coupon code ASDBooth, all caps, and you will receive your $25 discount. If you'd like to experience this workshop live in your home or at a venue near you, please feel free to reach out to me directly by email and we'll talk about it. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you soon.